welcome on behalf of the university and your athletic department and our social work department. Thank you all for being here. I am fortunate to have the opportunity to be your athletic director here and enjoy every single moment of it. And as Jim and I were talking, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here right now. I need to be at practice. But anyway, big week for us. And first I want to wish you all the best Thanksgiving that you can possibly have. We're all fortunate and blessed. And this is a great time for us to reflect and what we're thankful for, be it family or friends or whoever it is in our lives that provide us the joy that we are every single day able to have. So enjoy your Thanksgiving, and those of you who have an opportunity to be at the game, enjoy the game. Be safe, be smart, cheer on our team, and welcome our visiting fans as we spank them and kick them out of here and do it the right way. But I've had the opportunity to work with Dawn for a long time, and she's going to talk to you in a minute. But, years ago, what they called the NYSP program existed, where we got federal funding from the government to run camps across the country at different schools and here at The Ohio State University. And I even forgot what year it was. The funding got cut off. And we sat and decided that we were going to try and pick up the responsibility to fund the NYSP program. And it started out with just focusing on why was it cut. And it was cut largely because there was no feedback on the benefits of the camp. There was no work done to truly understand what was the benefits for the young people who participated in the camp besides learning the sport. And so we did a relationship with social work, and ultimately Dawn and her team came up with the LiFEsports program and embedded in what we were doing the work that was needed to understand what were young people learning through sport participation. The lessons learned are significant. I won't go over all those. You'll hear about those today. For me, it was kind of personal. I grew up in the east side of Cleveland, didn't have organized sports in my life, so having an opportunity to go to the Boys and Girls Club or things of that nature were beneficial. I learned a lot about group dynamics. I learned a lot about negotiating skills because I was no good in basketball, so I was always the first one on the court because I wanted to be there first to pick my team. But anyway, today's young people, all those skills that we talk about or we all think about, they don't understand them. So we have to go to where they are. Our young people today that we serve, the resilience is different. It's just a different world. And so we have to go to where they are. I tell my coaches all the time, we have to pay attention to who they are as human beings. Just because they're having a bad practice doesn't mean they're being lazy. They may have an issue going on in their lives. You need to understand what is it. So make sure you ask questions and you listen. And you find out the root issue to help them get through that issue. And the next day, they may have a better practice. And so today's young people and how they are taught and learned and raised is totally different. And what we have to do is go to where they are and accept that, embrace it, it is that way. LiFEsports helps with that in so many different ways, and so I appreciate Dawn doing that. You couldn't have a better speaker here today than Coach Tressel. He is going to, his teaching and everything that he's all about, you'll benefit from what you hear from him today. He's an outstanding teacher, outstanding educator, and an unbelievable human being. So you got one of the best ever in the business for you to talk to today. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dawn. I do want to thank you for being here and wish you all, again, a happy Thanksgiving. And hopefully on Saturday, you're all doing what I'm doing, late in the evening, having a nice Diet Coke. Yeah, and sitting back and being happy about the day. So thank you so much. Go Bucks.
Thanks, Gene. Welcome. So glad everybody's here tonight. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro about what LiFEsports is, what Coach Beyond is, and then we'll hand it off to to coach over there. So real quick, just to kind of set the stage for this work tonight and what we're doing here at Ohio State University and in partnership with OHSAA, I want to talk about our university-wide initiative called LiFEsports that Jean alluded to. So our mission is to prepare youth for life and leadership through sports, right? And where else better in the country to do that than at The Ohio State University and in our athletic department in partnership with 14 different units all across campus, including social work, public health, education, and human ecology. Just it goes on and on, 4-H youth development. At any rate, we focus on 3 different things. Foremost is our national exemplar LiFEsports camp that we offer in the summers. And each summer we serve over 800 kids across central Ohio, in other places like in Springfield City Schools and soon to be maybe Princeton City Schools. But nonetheless, we mostly serve those that are most socially vulnerable. So kids that are struggling, don't have access to sport, maybe come to social settings with different kinds of traumatic experiences, that through sport they can learn coping skills, life skills, self-control, regulation, communication, all these great values and skills that they can use in life and on the field. So nonetheless, we also then embed teaching and learning opportunities into the camp and into our year-round curriculum at Ohio State. So you saw kind of 2 young people up front at the registration desk. Those are students at Ohio State who are studying in this area of sport-based youth development and kids' well-being overall. Lastly, as Jean alluded, we do a ton of research and scholarship. And I'm really proud of this because our team really is setting the stage for the national work and international work that's happening in this space around student-athlete mental health. We just launched the findings from our national coach survey that was with Nike and Aspen Project Play and the Susan Crown Exchange. Those came out last week and are now setting the stage for a national agenda around this work, Coach Beyond, and doing the right thing through sports to make sure our kids are equipped for the challenges that they're faced with today. So what is Coach Beyond? So this is an initiative that we started with OHSAA that's funded by the Susan Crown Exchange. Susan Crown came about with what's called the Million Coach Challenge, and what they are trying to do is train 1 million coaches in positive youth development principles, mental wellness strategies for developing student athletes, leadership and life skill development. The list goes on. And there are 10 partners across the country involved in this work. In Ohio, our work is called Coach Beyond. We're going to train 15,000 coaches by 2024 through our different strategies on this wheel. And you can see this in the handout that was given to you at the registration desk, but things that make sense, right? How do you teach life skills through sport? How do you develop leaders? How do you address student-athlete mental health? How do you support mental health? How do we address behavioral issues through sport, whatnot? But nonetheless, this is the work we're doing. And so tonight is actually part of this series where we're focused in on fostering a positive team environment. And so I want to kind of say that because as we put together tonight, I was thinking, hey, who better to do that than Coach Tressel, right? And I was in Japan, and I shot him an email, and I said, hey, would you be willing to be part of this important work in Ohio that we're doing to support kids, student athletes, schools, and this broader agenda, right, to make sure that sport is more than just X's and O's and that we're coaching beyond. And he replied right back. And so we're so thankful that he's here tonight and really grateful to learn from one of the best who knows how to do this work better than anyone. And so with that said, I do want to acknowledge in our room, if you just raise your hand really quick, we have 10 different partner districts from across the state who are involved in this work of Coach Beyond. So we're not just here in Central Ohio, we're in all the regions of the state. So raise your hand, holler out loud. We're really thankful to our Princetons and our Hilliards and our Granvilles and whatnot that are here with us or part of this broader work as we move forward. Our Coach Beyond is also about a couple other things going on at the systems level here, but I'm not going to spend a lot of detail in that, but you'll find that in your brochure as well. So with all that said, let's get to why we're all here, which is having Coach Tressel share with us a little bit more about how he sees his work in creating a positive team environment and what the role of the coach is in that. And before I hand off, I do want to just say that many, many years ago, Jim invited me to a practice of his, and you probably don't remember this, but you also handed off to me that day your handbook. And one of the messages that has stuck with me for a really long time is this concept of yaw. Do you remember, right? I know you know what it is.
Who you associate with.
You are who you associate with. And so it has stuck with me for many years, and I can't wait to hear more about that today. So with all, I introduced Coach Tressel.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Dawn, and thanks, Gene, for those kind words. And it's kind of fun being back in here because we used to, in the preseason, have a lot of our team meetings in here. Roy, when you were here, we probably had them here, didn't we? Yep, and so it's kind of fun being back here. And I never got to stand up here then, though, because it was always the guys doing most of the presenting. And it's fun being with Dawn. I never knew Dawn stole one of my winner's manuals. Now I know where that went, you know. But our Vice President for Student Affairs and Institutional Effectiveness at Youngstown State University is Dr. Mike Sherman, who's around here somewhere. There he is. And I think he was partly responsible for Dawn being here at Ohio State 20 years ago. Mike spent 25 years here as a faculty member and as associate provost and so forth. And also Brian Turner, I think I saw somewhere. There's Brian. And I think Mike had something to do with Brian being around here. They worked together. And little known fact, who knows who the head coach at Notre Dame is? Marcus Freeman, right? Marcus Freeman would not be the head coach at Notre Dame if it weren't for Brian Turner, right? When Marcus was done with the NFL, we wanted to get him back here as a graduate assistant, and it was Brian that stepped up and helped him make that happen. And so it's a small world. This Thanksgiving week, thanks Don, Brian, Mike, Gene, everyone that has been a part of all the things. And I'll thank Roy later after he gets done asking me the questions. I might thank him or might not. But you know, coach beyond. So the word coach, we've got a lot of educators here. The word coach, when it was describing something, described like a carriage. And it was a coach, and it carried folks. And then when it took a turn and started describing a person, it was in England, I believe, in the 1800s or whatever, and the students that were fortunate enough to have someone work with them so that they could pass their exams, so that they could go on to achieve their goals and their life's ambitions, was the coach, because it was determined that they carried them to the point, which is pretty cool. I know the last 8.5 years I've been a president, and sometimes they'll slip on campus and call me coach, and they'll say, oh, I'm sorry. I said, no, I enjoy being called coach, because the story I heard about that word, maybe after or maybe before the bit in England there, was that in colonial days, you were either educated at a one-room schoolhouse, or you were fortunate that you were educated in a stagecoach, where you had an individual person that took you around, and you learned botany, and you learned geography, and you read the classics, and you learned mathematics, and you just the greatest education you could possibly get. And so back in those days, when they asked you, how were you educated, you were either in a school or you were coached. And so coaching, in my opinion, has always been the highest form of making a difference to an individual. And here's the operative part of this: if done properly. Because today, I think if you asked society to pick a picture of what a coach looks like, it would probably be someone screaming at someone. I mean, that's people's vision of what coaching is, screaming, as opposed to carrying them somewhere like the English were carried to pass their exams and so forth, or like the colonial folks were that had the blessing of everything that was a part of their being, everything that they could possibly learn they had that instruction inside that stagecoach, and they were coached. But anyway, Dawn didn't give me the job of telling you what a coach is, okay? She gave me the job of quickly, and you have to give me the hook because Ray will tell you those meetings got long, right, Ray? So you have to give me the hook. Creating a positive team environment. Well, I can tell you this from our staff standpoint. The thing that we tried to live up to, that was our goal to live up to, were two little sayings that we had in our staff meeting room. Because we thought those were the most important things that would create a positive team environment and, of course, impact every single person on the team, whether they were first string or didn't play it down or whatever. And so the two thoughts were, one I attributed to my father, very short thought. I'm sure he's not the first one that said it, but I heard it from him, therefore I'm quoting him. He used to always say that they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's teaching, that's parenting, that's coaching, that's supervising. Really, until a person is convinced that you care about them beyond their performance, beyond how well they play their position or play their role, whatever, if they know that you care about them as a whole person, then they'll be very interested in learning from you what you know, the techniques that you would like to teach, the knowledge you would like to impart. And so that was one of the two key tenets for us in our effort to build a positive team environment. Because if every one of those guys knew we cared about them, then we had a chance. We had a chance to have that positive environment. We had a chance for them to learn the knowledge they needed to become the best they could. The other thought that was on our staff wall was a quote by Albert Einstein that I actually first heard in a lecture hall here on campus somewhere. My son was visiting Ohio State, looking at the Honors College, and this engineering professor put up on an overhead projector, now we've come a long way, on an overhead projector, a quote from Albert Einstein. And I was sitting there as a dad, and I looked at that, and all of a sudden my coach world hit me, and I said, this is exactly right. This is exactly what we should be doing. And the quote from Albert Einstein, and it was Professor William Maris. And it was funny, when I came back here to Ohio State to be the football coach, he was one of the ones that reached out to me. He said, hey, I've heard you use my quote quite a bit. I said, well, I probably didn't acknowledge you. So after that, I started acknowledging. So if you run into Professor Maris, you know. His quote from Albert Einstein was, concern for man and his fate must form the chief interest of all technical endeavors. Never forget this in the midst of your diagrams and equations. So when I saw that up on that overhead projector, I thought, wow, no one has more diagrams and equations than we do. But what Einstein's saying is concern for man and his fate, his future, our players, their future, must form the chief interest of all technical endeavors. Never forget this in the midst of your diagrams and equations. I don't care what you teach, there's diagrams and equations. And this was an engineering professor saying that he tried hard to ascribe to that. And so our effort to build a positive team environment began with how did we look at what our role was with our players. That was number one. Now, did that mean we didn't want to win? Of course we wanted to win. Does that mean we didn't have diagrams and equations? Of course we did. But every day after our staff meeting to begin the day, we had to make sure that when we went out to now get involved in being and impacting our players, that the chief interest was them. They needed to know we cared and that their future was paramount. That's number one. Hard to do sometimes, because what's the pressure on coaches? What does society say your number one thing is? Win, baby. And so it takes intentional work, constant reminders that those are the most important things. It was interesting, whenever we would have a new assistant coach come onto our staff, and we would show them the amount of time we spent that had nothing to do with X's and O's, they were like, Coach, I need more meeting. I need more meeting time. I got some video I need to show. I've got this, I've got that. And all the guys would say, hey, just relax. Within a year, you'll realize that A, that's not the way we're going to do it, and B, you wish you would have taken this approach long before this. Because the time we tried to spend in helping our players understand that we care about them and helping them understand things outside of the game, we really grew to believe that the harder we worked on that, the more games we'd win, versus the harder we worked at studying video or practicing or meetings on this and that. And so our effort at creating a positive team environment, being good helps too. It's a lot more fun to win. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But if the overriding effort is helping them understand that we care about them and that we really want to carry them to their future, just like that coach carried them to their future, that, to me, can help create a positive team environment. One thing that Gene said that I think is so true, when he was talking about we have to meet them where they are and so forth, I think youth sports, and many of you are high school, right? So you get them after they've had some experiences, okay? Just like in higher ed, we get students after they've been K through 12 and 18 years of life. And it seems that when I was growing up 100 years ago, that when you went to play a sport, Little League or junior high it was called back then and so forth, really the discussion was about what you could gain from that, what the value was, and the value was that you learned how to work hard. You learned how to be disciplined. You learned how to get up after you were knocked down. You learned the importance of teamwork. It was value-driven, the reason that you did it. And it was fun. It was fun. It seems to me that we've had a bit of an evolution, especially as you look at youth sports, and that it seems to be about, you know, can I get the trophy, scholarship someday? It seems to be there's different goals. There's different things that take the attention. And so, in my mind, it makes it a little bit harder for all of you to have a positive team environment when they're looking for different goals than those goals that will help them to their future goals. So that's why this is so important to have. Wouldn't it be nice if every parent had their child go play for the values, period? Well, that's not the way it is. Wouldn't that be great if every youth program talked solely about the values and not about simply, well, if you win, you can be seen and you can be recruited or, you know, whatever it happens to be. That's not the world we live in. And so as Gene mentioned, we've got to go where they are That's why programs such as LiFEsports, Coach Beyond, etc., are so critical, because we're kind of starting from a point when we get them that maybe they weren't heading down the path that would be most healthy. And so I began with making sure we care about them. Every single coach at any level, if the young people will know that you care, we got a chance. And if every kid knows that we're concerned about their future, we've got a chance. But that stereotype of the coach yelling really is a signal that there's some critiquing of the performer going out there. Hi. Oh, that meant 2 minutes? Okay, I thought you were waving. I'm going to say hi. Yeah, hi. My age, I don't get many girls waving at me, so I took advantage of that. So now you've lost where I am. So we've got a challenge. And we've got to take programs like this and maybe do a little catch-up. Training of youth coaches is so critical. We visited 7 or 8 years ago in Indianapolis with 6 commissioners of all the youth football programs in the country in a big event. And the best story I have, and then I'll be done with my 2 minutes, I promise, there was a panel. And it was a group of us, and one of the panelists was the vice president of the Miami Dolphins. And I can't remember her name. I don't know if she's still the vice president of the Miami Dolphins. But I thought to myself, this is kind of interesting. You know, we're on this panel to talk about we've got to do a better job in youth coaching, and we've got to change the narrative, and it's got to be more about how we can gain the real things that sport has to offer and so forth. And so it came for her time to present, and I'll never forget it. She said that she was living there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, vice president of the Miami Dolphins, the highest of all levels of football, and her son was kind of small. And she told him all along that, hey, look, you're not going to play football. You know, you're going to get hurt. And when he went to high school in 9th grade, he decided to go to St. Thomas Aquinas. Some of you have heard of St. Thomas Aquinas. I mean, they got, 10 Division I guys every year playing for the state championship. And she said to him, hey, look, you're not going to, you're not going to play football. Look at you, and, look at them, and, you're not going to do it. Well, every year he kept begging her. Well, he's going into his senior year of high school, and he was off of 5'4", 125 pounds or something, and finally he put his foot down. And he said, Mom, I don't think you have any idea what I can get from playing football. No, I'm not going to be first string. No, I probably won't get in a game. But I can learn so many things. And I want to be a part of a team. And I want to work hard. And I want to be there to help the guys in practice so that the guys can go win the games. You've got to let me be a part of that because it has so much value. She's like, whoa. I'm the vice president of the Miami Dolphins, and I don't even know what the value of sport is? So we have, I don't know if we want to call it a crisis. We have a challenge that we've got to do something to get the focus back on the values. And I'm sure the same thing is in education, right, Kathy? I'm going to get the scholarship. I'm going to get the, award. We've got to get it back. You remember our Rhodes Scholar. I'm going to take 1 extra minute, okay? Our Rhodes Scholar at Youngstown State University came to visit Kathy Suki at Dublin Jerome and her honor students, or whatever they were. And I'll never forget what Ashley Orr said. Now, Ashley Orr was held back in first grade. Then all of a sudden, a math teacher made a difference in her life, got her excited about learning, and comes to Youngstown State. She's in our honors program, tries out for the Rhodes Scholarship, which, you know, thousands and thousands of people do throughout the country, and she won the Rhodes Scholarship. And she said to the Devlin Jerome students, who you know are focused on their GPA, right? Winning games, and what that will get for them. She said, I knew I had it figured out when I didn't care about my grades anymore, and I fell in love with learning. Well, wouldn't that be something if we could get back to that in athletics is, you know what, I'm going to try for the trophy, but as soon as I fall in love with the values that I can get by playing in sports, then I'll probably be better than I've ever been. So with that, since Dawn came up with a club or something, should we call Roy up?
Yeah, let's get Roy up here. So, yeah.
Do you want to introduce him?
I will.
Okay.
So do you want to introduce him?
You probably don't want me to introduce him.
No, you got some stories to tell?
I've got stories.
So most importantly about Roy Hall that I want to just kind of talk a little bit about is our team at LiFEsports and does a lot of work in the Linden community here in Central Ohio. It's one of the most violent neighborhoods in all of the state, but also a community rich in tradition and culture and love for faith and friendship and festivities. And so nonetheless, Roy does a lot of work with the Driven Foundation, his foundation, in that community and in other places all across Central Ohio. And so I know his work mostly from that, but I did get to watch you play in the national championship game in 2007, so that was cool. But at any rate, are you 2002?
I don't know how cool that was. But, I got my microphone up. There we go. There we go.
We might have to get further apart.
All right. I didn't want to be next to Coach anyway. Or I might be able to use that if it doesn't work, but this is okay. We're good. All right. So thank you for that. The 07 championship game wasn't as fun as it sounded, I guess. And if this might keep going, I'll borrow that one. I might be able to borrow that one just so we're good. Because I need to hear this real quick. Did you hear me make that noise? That's 38 years old right there. All right, here we go. All right, here we go. So I get a chance to sit up here with Coach. Coach, thank you so much. Clap it up for Coach Tressel and Here's the thing. If Coach Tress wants an extra minute or two, you got to give it to him, right? Because we had a couple extra minutes in that overtime game in 2002 national title, and we needed it to win the game. So sometimes you need a couple extra minutes to get your point across. One of the things that when Coach is up here talking, and when you're in this room specifically, because this is where we hosted all of our night meetings during training camp, as Coach mentioned. And, you know, we had a lot of different meetings over here and training table and things of that nature. And you start thinking about all the stories. And as he's talking about his philosophy and why he coaches the way that he does, these aren't just things that he wrote down before he got here on his way over here and just felt like telling you some good stories. These are things that he obviously lives out, and you guys have probably experienced on a personal level. There was a moment where now head coach of Michigan State, Mel Tucker, it probably was his second or third year here because it was my first or second year here. And legend has it that Mel Tucker was going berserk on his defensive backs. He used to be a defensive backs coach when he was here. And he's going nuts, and I don't know if he was cursing him, but he was yelling enough, right? So much so that the camera guy caught Mel going off on his guys during practice. And so as they were, as a coaching unit, discussing practice and what was going on, you talk about accountability and making sure that your players know that you really care. Apparently, Coach Tressel was looking down, and he looked up and pointed out, you know, Coach Mel Tucker. You could tell he was yelling and his gyrations and hands going everywhere. He wasn't putting his hands up for OHIO. He was going nuts on his DBs. And Coach Tressel does it in Coach Tressel style. When Coach is looking down, and looks up without raising his head, right? There's going to be some information that he needs to give. And he looked up kind of above his glasses, and he said, Mel, we only raise our voice in encouragement, and then look back down at the ground. And legend has it that Mel Tucker looked at him and looked at everybody and was like, what? But everybody looked at him and just shook his head like, that's what we do, right? That's what we do. We only raise our voice in encouragement, which stood out to me when I finally got wind of the story. Like Coach Tressel talking to his coaches, just like he talked to us, he means business then, right? So you better get on board. But that just kind of goes to show you what type of values and what drives coach. It really is the importance of taking care of your people and making sure you know that they care. So we have a few questions to ask you, Coach, and we want to start off talking about your coaching philosophy. And you gave a definition of what coach meant in the historical perspective of it and how we've arrived in present day of what a coach is. But you didn't necessarily get into the reason why you decided to coach. All right. And so now everyone, all your former players, they call you coach. You know, why, when you first were starting, why did you decide that you wanted to be a coach?
Well, I was fortunate. My father was a coach, and I got to watch him every day. But still in high school, you know, when you're in high school, you don't know what you want to do. And I remember going into the guidance counselor's office junior year, going in my senior year. It's okay, now it's time to start thinking about applying for colleges and you know, figuring out what you want to do. And I'm like, hey, I don't know. And he said, you know, your math scores are really good. You ought to think about being an engineer.
That's not a coach.
And I said, well, I don't really like trains that much.
There you go.
So he said, well, you better start thinking about it. So I started thinking about it. And I had two older brothers. And I decided that, you know what, I think I want to go into education. I saw the impact my father had on his young people, and I saw that my brothers were enjoying out in the world, and then I started really studying what is that. And, you know, just like Don was saying, you know, you are who you associate with.
Sure.
You are also who you read.
That's good.
And I started reading about Tom Landry and John Wooden and the people that I idolized, and found out that I wasn't just going to read about the games they won and the championships. It was about the impact they had. And so I think once I figured out I better figure something out, and then I started reading about what impact coaches can have, I was sold.
That's awesome. Can you guys clap it up for that? I need some noise. So make some noise. Make sure we're here. To this point, you should have y'all in your notes, right, in your phone. Y'all who you associate with, that should be in there, right? We should have the date that the word coach was created and where and what town it came from, right? You should have that down somewhere, all right? But you should also have this written down, what is my why, and am I still leaning on that on a day-to-day basis, right? As Coach alluded to, so many coaches, youth coaches specifically, get caught up in that tornado of just winning, right? And sometimes you get tired of being embarrassed and losing, but you're teaching values. I was told that the mark of a great coach at the youth level is determined by whether or not the player comes back to play the next year. All right, that's how you determine whether or not you're a great coach or not by how many games. You want to have a little bit of coaching experience on the youth level. I used to coach out in Pickerington. Second grade all the way up through seniors in the league, which were sixth graders. And my son actually played, and that's why I decided to coach. I wanted to be side by side with him. But from the time he was in kindergarten through the sixth grade, we coached. And then there was a 2-year gap where he didn't want to play football, and I didn't coach. And so when we came back when he was in the fifth grade, Coach, we went 1-8 in all of our games. They were all close games. You know, you lose 10-6 or 14-13. And, you know, being a former Buckeye, everybody expected me to be the guy to go undefeated because all they were concerned about was winning games. It's totally different coaching fifth graders. But that next year, all those kids came back and we went undefeated and won the championship. And that actually put me in position to have the position I have right now as the wide receivers coach at Gahanna Lincoln High School. And it's the same things that Coach Tressel just talked about in making a difference is why I coach. I could care less whether or not we win football games, although we do play St. Ed's in the state semifinals on Friday. Could care less. But I'm more about building the character of those young people. Because when you drop a football in front of everyone, which I've done before, I fumbled a football in front of 108,000 people. You got to be able to lean on more than just the fact that you're a football player to get through some of those challenging times.
Let me go back to the one thought you had, because I think it bears reinforcement. One of the national crises we have is that youth sport participation, all sports, when you hit age 13, it crashes. When I was growing up, there was very few youth sport things. We had Little League Baseball, and that was about it. And you didn't get to start playing sports until junior high. And so all of a sudden, sport participation from age 13 went up. Right now in our country, you hit age 13 and it's going down. So all these 14 and ups are not gaining the values that have made us a great country. And so that youth program, and I know there's a lot of high schools and stuff here, but somehow, some way, you've got to get to the youth level before it's too late, before the student has a poor experience.
Sure.
And decides this isn't for me.
So we want to make sure we protect those, not only the relationship that kids have with sports, but the relationship that they have obviously with their coaches and even themselves. Sometimes you have to protect kids from themselves. Building relationships has always been something that you've been great at doing, not only with the individual player, but overall as a team. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some strategies on, number one, strategies on how to build relationships with the individuals on team? You have a big team like a football team, 125 guys. How do you, as a coach, build relationships with those individuals? And then how do you forge the relationships amongst the players so that they always aren't isolated by position?
You know, I think one of the things we worked hard on, and you can say whether or not we did well with it, but whether you were one of our stars like Roy or you were a walk-on who wasn't going to play, you were treated the same way. You were loved the same way. And that was something that we spent a lot of time and energy as we worked with our teams. Every single person was important. That's one thing I think is critical. The second one, which you're talking about your takeaways,
sure.
I give them another takeaway, okay? Critique, and this goes for teachers as well, critique the performance, not the performer. And that is so important. You know, hey, Roy, I love you, but you can't fumble.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I mean, sure. But hey, you got to know I love you. It's not the performer that's being critiqued. It's the performance. And one thing that is true, and Roy, you know this, our kids come to us, I don't care what level they're at, as Gene mentioned, fragile. And the last thing that they can deal with is being critiqued as a person, being embarrassed, being singled out that you're a bad person. Now, you're not maybe what you did wasn't what we need done, that performance wasn't good enough, but helping them understand that they can't lose your love just because you know, as many times as I followed up, God's not giving up on me.
Sure.
Well, that's the same thing with the coach. As many times as the performer doesn't do what we need to do and we're 1-8 and so forth, if they believe that you'll never give up on them, that you still love them, that you're still trying to have them gain those values from this experience, that to me is as important as anything.
That's awesome. That deserves another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, you know, I haven't actually run before. Roy, Well, you're so much nicer than I.
You know, I just figured like they're gonna be, maybe they're saving their claps for on Saturday. I don't know. You know,
Right.
everybody's gonna be clapping and cheering.
Save them.
Yeah,
Save
absolutely.
them. We don't need them tonight.
No, you mentioned just everyone on the team being treated the same. You know, to me, this couldn't be more evident than in 2006. In 2006, headed into the 2006 season, Coach Tressel pulled out a secret weapon. His secret weapon was a guy by the name of Tyson Gentry. And so Tyson came to Ohio State from Perkins High School in Sandusky, Ohio, and came as a punter. And he came and he was one of the best in the state. But Coach Tressel found out that Tyson was an elite wide receiver at the high school level. Now, the crazy thing about Tyson is he earned this position as a wide receiver because he lost the quarterback position his senior year. He was going out for quarterback, and another guy won his position. So instead of pouting, you know, he had some morals that probably his coach instilled in him, and he decided he was going to play wide receiver. And so he all-state wide receiver, all-state punter, whatever it may be, and ended up at Ohio State after a gentleman who was supposed to be punting ended up not being able to come. So he ended up coming here at Ohio State, and over the next couple years, you know, he's punting or whatever, but we needed some depth at the wide receiver position. So Coach goes and somehow talks to Tyson, probably brought him into the office and talked to him, and Tyson came out. Next thing you know, he was in the wide receiver room. The room, Brian Robisky, Brian Hartline, Terry Ginn Jr., Anthony Gonzalez. I was in there some days. I was trying to sneak into the tight end room, but Coach wouldn't let me. And he was hanging out, and we taught him everything that we knew. He was a part of who we were. Just because he was a scout team guy didn't mean that we didn't want to show him what to do. We're in a spring practice, and we're in the shoe. We're in the stadium, and there's no one in there except us, and you could hear every hit, every echo, and this was just a tradition that we would do. And Tyson goes out and lines up, and now Tyson's worked his way up into that second, third string rep situation, and you know, he has to run a dig route. And a dig route is 15 yards vertical, all right? Plant your outside foot if you're on the outside, right? Turn, 90-degree angle, go in as fast as you possibly can. Don't run through the zone, right? Catch the football, and then get vertical, get as many yards as you're coming. Now, the thing about the dig route, coaches, is that it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get smacked by a safety. You will get hit. So most people don't really want to run the dig route. They rather run a post because they don't have to get hit. Well, Tyson lines up as fearless as he always is, and he was probably about 160 pounds or whatever it was, and about 6'1". Lines up, runs as fast as he possibly can, puts his right foot in the ground, breaks, turns that head around, ball comes in perfect, catches the ball. Kurt Coleman, who was our All-American safety, barreling down on him, all right, lowers his shoulder, gets hit, popped, hit on the ground. Great catch, great conversion, first down, offense moving forward. And Tyson doesn't move. And so we're getting pumped up. Tyson, get up, man. Come on. Get back to the huddle. Silence. Well, by that time, Coach Tressel's jogging over, and everyone's jogging over, and they start yelling out, trainer, trainer, get the trainer, get the trainer. Tyson, emergency surgeries, et cetera, and paralyzed pretty much from the neck down. That year, we put that 24 decal on the back of the helmet and dedicated that entire season to Tyson. Multiple days, every single day, guys on the team went up and spent time with Tyson Gentry. Now, here's a player who will never get on the field at wide receiver, probably, was on scout team almost permanently, but gave it his all every single day and made the ultimate sacrifice of his body. And Coach Tressel made sure that the entire team knew that he belonged to us and that he was not going to allow that player in Tyson to be isolated. I tell you that story because, Coach, I want you to talk about how you build the sense of belonging and connectivity or feeling connected to the entire group no matter who you are. It's easy to do it for the star players and the standouts, but how do you do it for that kid who may not be the person who ever gets notoriety?
You know, I think, Roy, like anything else, intentional effort to do that is where it begins. So if you recall, here you probably sat in one of these seats when it was the night before the hometown test, right?
The worst test ever.
So our guys had to know the name, hometown, and high school of all 120 of their people, maybe even jersey number.
Jersey number.
And they knew that there was going to be a certain day that that test was going to be called, and if they didn't do well on that test, there might be some physical activity.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. Or perhaps preseason. Who were the roommates you roomed with during preseason?
People that weren't in my position group.
Yep.
Linebackers, offensive linemen. Rob Sims ended up being my roommate because he was one of my roomies in
Yep.
camp.
Intentionally, we wanted these guys to live with someone else and find out, you know what, that's a good guy. I'm from Brush. He's from California. He plays receiver. He plays linebacker. You know what? He's a black guy. He's a white guy. Whatever. If you spend time together, you find out we're all pretty cool. Same thing with road trips. We used to have these little fold-out things, remember?
Loved them.
And they were the itinerary, and you had all these trifolds, or I don't know, like 8 folds.
Yeah, it was hard to get
It open. I don't know whoever figured them out. But as soon as we would hand those out on Friday, when they were getting to go to the hotel, whether it was a home game at the Blackwell Hotel or away game to get on the plane, they would rustle through those to find out who they were rooming with and look for the odd couple. They'd say, ooh, there's going to be a fight
tonight. Absolutely.
This one. But that was intentional because everybody is important. You need to get to know everybody. You need to appreciate everybody. Everyone, what they believe is important. How they look, where they're from, what they want to do, what their philosophy is. And so we wanted to have you guys experience as many different guys as we could. And we wanted as many guys as we could experience you.
Yes.
So they would appreciate you. And so they would know you. And so they would care about you. And then I think the other intentional thing, I'm sure there are many others, but is at every point we could possibly do it, we wanted to point out the importance of every single person. That whether it's that scout team player of the week or that scout team that gave us a great look. You know, everyone talks about that 2002 national championship team from 25 years ago. The guys on the scout team, Roy Hall was a true freshman. Santonio Holmes, Troy Smith, A.J. Hawk, Bobby Carpenter, Rob Sims, Nick Mangold, Mike Kudla, Mike DeAndrea. I mean, we had a star-studded scout team. And they worked like crazy against our guys. And by the end of the year, both groups were much, much better. But we tried to make it known to these guys, you don't know how important you are. And so we've got to do that in our classrooms and in our society. The person, regardless of role, ideology, is important. The old saying, this might be another takeaway.
It should be.
That I'm insignificant until I understand and believe that I am insignificant without every one of the rest of you. I'm insignificant without you. And we tried to build that with the team. Now, it's hard because the media wrote more about Troy Smith than they did Roy Hall. Roy Hall bailed Troy Smith out of some things many times on the field. But, you know, they're going to write about different people. And so we've got to, in our youth sports, in our high school sports, in our college sports, in our classroom, in our community, in our organizations, is intentionally teach the importance of every other person. Then we wouldn't need to be talking about inclusion. Inclusion should be our way of life. And so we tried to make it the way of life of the Buckeyes and the Penguins and everyone else we worked with.
Okay, that deserves a don't save your cheers on that. Go ahead, clap it up one more time for Coach Tressel. That was awesome. As we kind of round third here and headed home. And,
round third? We're just getting started, right?
No, yeah. Not looking over here. We got.
Oh, okay. Were you getting the hook?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she had the mic before. Now, well, she was a no. So just in closing, Coach, and then I'll say this as well. I grew up in a home, without a dad, without a father figure. I didn't even know what that looked like. Mom raised me, and everything that I was is because of my mom. So going and being handed off to a coach like Coach Tressel is a little bit different. We grew up originally inner city. Mom moved to the suburbs, trying to get us a better way, better education, so forth and so on. But for her, based on how she grew up and how her parents grew up in the 50s and 60s, her apprehension to hand me off, we talked about a little bit about race, hand me off to a white coach was a challenge, right? But because of all the other things that Coach was bringing to the table, primarily getting my degree, my mom was basically here, go for it, and trusted Coach to do that. Everything that I am today in regards to coaching, how I coach, how I parent, came from observing Coach Tress, that you don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to curse. You don't have to swear. You don't have to yell. Like, you don't have to do that, right? If you're coaching people, whether it's adults or your young people, you can do it and do it the right way. So he taught me those things, even if he didn't mean to, just picking up on those things. And I always honor him. Some guys just look at him as, they call him Tress. I would never always call him Coach Tressel because I look at him as a superhero to me because of his impact on me. When I was at Ohio State, you want to play a lot, you want to do a lot of different things, but you realize as an adult, different guys are coached different ways because coaches have the ability, good ones, to see certain things inside you and know that you're going to be okay, right? And so I'm thankful that of all the hundreds or thousands of men that he could have chose to be up here with him on stage, that he thought in his spirit to bring me up here. And I'm so thankful for that because so much of who I am is because of what he taught me then and still continues to teach me now. So, Coach, thank you so much for showing the audience how to build trust and put other people first. Thank you so much for your transparency, and thank you much for living out your dream, which was getting into coaching to make a difference in the lives of others. I'm living proof that it actually works. So thank you so much, Coach.
Thank you. You didn't get the last word.
I was no. All right.
No. You said when I asked for an extra minute.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a great. This is a great example. Sonia Hall, Roy's mom, awesome. She may have thought that his impact later in life was going to be gone and play 10 or 15 years in the NFL. What she didn't realize is Roy went and played in the NFL, but what he's doing now has 100 times more impact than what she thought might be a great goal. In fact, I do have one story. I'm taking 2 extra minutes. So, because I always tease them about this one. So, I don't hear from parents very often. I think email has allowed that to happen. But anyway, I didn't hear from our players' parents very often. But one day, I'm in my office, and they gave me that little message slip, and it was on my desk, and it said, "Please call Sonia Hall." I thought, wow, I never get calls from the parents. And then down there it has that little RE, regarding. Roy's playing time. Now, Roy was a freshman, I think. Maybe a redshirt freshman, I don't know. And as he rattled off, you know, guys like Teddy Ginn and Santonio Holmes and Michael Jenkins and you know, and, you know, I mean, lots of guys were going to get to play, and not everyone was going to get to play all the time. And I knew he knew that, and I knew how hard he worked to earn his playing time. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have a little fun with this. And my office was right next to the locker room. When you walked out my door, you walked into the locker room. And it just so happened our lockers were numbered, 1 through 120 or whatever. Well, Roy was number 8. And it just so happened number 8 was right there. I opened the door. I said, oh, man, hallelujah, I've hit the jackpot. Roy's sitting in front of his locker. So I went up to Roy and I said, hey, Roy, I got this phone message. What should I do with this? And he looked at, give me that. But, I mean, think about this. Roy Hall, through the Driven Foundation, through his work with our student athletes here at Ohio State, through his work with the Gahanna Lincoln Lions, and all the things I don't even know that he does, he's having more Coach Beyond impact than if he went and played for 10 years in the NFL and was living out on a yacht somewhere. And so we need our coaches, beginning at the smallest level. We need our parents, and Dawn and Coach Bates and all of you guys. Somehow we got to figure out a way to coach the parents. We got to figure out a way to coach the youth parents. Because if we can get reinforcement as to the real value of sport and get them to reinforce that, there's going to be more Roy Halls. And really, we're going to be fine if we have more Roy Halls. So with that, how about a hand for number 8?
Oh, here
Roy Hall.
Thank you so much, Coach.
Love you, man. Appreciate it.
That was so fun to watch. Thank you so much to both of you. Hey, I'm just going to wrap up real quick here with a couple things that are coming underway for Coach Beyond. Foremost, we're really excited in December on the 12th to have 2 WNBA greats with us on our webinar that night from 7 to 8. And so we'll have Katie Smith and Sylvia Foles talking about how to develop leaders, right? Transforming student athletes into leaders, right, on and off the court. And so we're so stoked to have them. Please join us and look for more of our sessions coming up. I also want to give a shout out to Doug Ute here in the audience from OHSAA. Thank you for all you do in the leadership role that you have in the state. And I think you'll be on that webinar with us that night too. So nonetheless, before we leave, we do have a QR code here. If you want to learn more about what's going on at Coach Beyond and within LiFEsports, check us out on your cell phone, grab that QR code. There's also an opportunity on that website to just put your name to get more information, or if you would like us to come out to your school district or to your community-based organization or wherever to do some kind of training like this in some of the space around Coaching Beyond, we're happy to do that because that's part of our work with this statewide agenda for the next couple of years. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for coming here. I want to thank our team at LiFEsports and Athletics. Jerry Davis is sitting here too, Dale McFay. And then most gratefully thank Coach Tressel. It's funny, he was like, I don't even know what to call you. I don't know what to call you because I'm just in awe of, is it Jim? Is it Coach? Is it Coach Tressel? We're just really, really grateful for you to spend your time with us tonight and give back to the community and to Ohio State and to the sport world in the way that you do. And Roy, it was a pleasure to hear your jokes and also hear your heart as you did such a wonderful job moderating the questions with him. So thank you so much to both of you. Let's give them a big applaud. And thank you so much. Check out the